Hey, Ryan Reynolds here. Wishing you a very happy half-off holiday because right now Mint Mobile is offering you the gift of 50% off unlimited. To be clear, that's half price, not half the service. And Mint is still premium unlimited wireless for a great price. So that means a half day, yeah? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Big news! Boost Mobile is now sending experts nationwide to deliver and set up customers' new phones at home or work.
Wait, we're going on tour?
Not a tour. We're delivering and setting up customers' phones so it's easier to upgrade.
Let's get in the tour bus and hit the road.
No, not a tour bus. It's a regular car we use to deliver and set up customers' phones at home or work.
Are you a groupie on this tour?
We deliver and set up phones. It's not a tour.
Oh, you're definitely a groupie.
Introducing Store to Door. Switch and get a new device with expert setup and delivery wherever you're at.
Delivery available for select devices purchased at boostmobile.com.
Hi there, and welcome again to the Explaining History podcast. And it's nearly the end of the year, and I rarely ever talk about the podcast itself. When the point of it isn't to be a thing to talk about or not. But sometimes I think in the process of building a community here, it's important to talk about what the podcast is and what it's for, what I think it's for. I mean, you may disagree. I guess when you hear an episode, you make the sense of it that you make, and so there are many explaining history podcasts in that sense. It's a complete accident. Okay, this is one I always say to everybody who comes for an interview about their books on the podcast. Everything is a total accident. It started out years ago when I taught history in a high school here in Wales as just something I'd heard about podcasting as a useful medium, and I was that kind of annoying teacher that wanted to try a few little kind of other technological and social media things that were happening at the time. There's some teachers, some history teachers that were really big into Twitter, and I wasn't at the time. Instead, I thought, well, let's see what podcasting as a technology can be like. What can it do? And so I just began. There's a whole principle in education of the idea of the flipped lesson. The learning, the knowledge absorption you do for homework, and then the structured tasks you do in the lesson time. So that was basically the idea. And then it just took on a life of its own. I moved between teaching jobs, and I finally left teaching 2 years ago. I work as a counsellor now of the psychotherapeutic, not the political variety, before people start writing to me demanding what's happening with their bins. And I reached the end of my life as a history teacher just thinking, well, that I was going through the motions of teaching, and it was time to move aside and let somebody else have a go. And that's, what I believe as well, that if you've if something doesn't feel kind of energized to you anymore, then it means that somebody else is waiting in the wings to bring the energy. And I hope that's what happened. But here, the podcast itself has been kind of evergreen, for the most part. There have been times when I've been tired by it. I've been doing it for 13 years now. And there is a reason why I'm talking about this now and not at any other time. There have been times that I've been kind of exhausted by it. But I've always felt that there was something worth saying. And the question is, well, what? What is it we're trying to say here? What point are we trying to make? And I think the first answer to that question is a kind of negative point. It's about kind of what the podcast is not. Now, probably if you search history podcasts, the ones that are absolutely, the genre winners are kind of history entertainment podcasts. And that's not to belittle the presenters, because they obviously research their stuff very well. But the purpose is to tell stories, interesting stories, amusing stories, exciting stories, but stories nonetheless. I suppose I do that in a way. I mean, take, for example, one of the most recent ones we did about post-war American prosperity. We're looking at a particular time period, and I try to kind of have a beginning and an end, 1945 to 1965, say. And there is a kind of a story arc there. Lots of these things, what begins the phenomenon we're looking at, the features of the phenomenon, its course, and what perhaps brings it to an end. But I don't think the purpose is to entertain, and if I have entertained anybody, I'm very sorry. I will do a penance for that. Instead, I think the purpose, as the podcast implies, the title implies, the purpose is to explain. Who am I to explain anything? Well, I'm a history teacher or former history teacher. Do I know necessarily things that other people don't? Well, kind of. I mean, I've read a lot of history books, but you're only getting my version of things. And I think this is really important to state, that I'm not a Wikipedia page. I can't give a definitive version of anything. I am a kind of an internet filter. I mean, I choose to read books by, say, Tony Judd as opposed to Niall Ferguson. I choose to read books by Juliet Gardner on modern British history, as opposed to, I don't know, somebody terrible. But and I approach things from a number of political and ideological perspectives. I absolutely do. And probably if you are one of these kind of right-wing free speech enthusiasts, you're not going to like what I have to say very much. The way I approach things is from a broadly humanistic perspective. I myself, I would consider myself to be socialist in my views, but I don't think that means I've talked to plenty of people on the podcast who clearly aren't, and I think that's fine. I believe in a plurality of views, and I'm not really seeking to convince anybody of anything. I think that, for example, if you look at questions around the things I've been talking about recently about Trump and world trade and things like that, that the body of evidence that I'm articulating supports the thing I'm trying to say. I mean, most of the time when I come out with something, I think it's because it is the most credible explanation. The other thing that informs me is the belief that there are structural explanations to things by and large. I don't really subscribe to great men of history theories, that things were going terrifically badly, and then if it wasn't for Winston Churchill saying the right speech at the right time, then, things would have got even worse. Well, it's not to say that speeches at certain times aren't pivotal, But what normally happens is when somebody is making a speech like the Fight Them on the Beach's speech, it's because there are structural forces in play that make that speech not only meaningful, but they make it kind of resonate. And structural forces, I mean, the kinds of economic and social forces that affect and shape the lives of millions of people, and the kinds of economic and social forces that, say, for example, facilitate mass aircraft production or determine who will be able to hoard wealth in times of great poverty, or demographic changes that ensure that it doesn't really matter what the speeches of Stalin or Mao or Hitler or Churchill or Roosevelt or anyone like that mean, that the outcome is kind of already concluded. One of the reasons why I really like Anthony Beevor's History of the Second World War is because he looks at the structural and economic and demographic realities of the Second World War and concludes that the Axis powers they did very well for a couple of years, but the chances of them succeeding long term against the size of the Red Army and the manufacturing output of the entirety of the USA, the entirety of the British Empire, and the Soviet Union was negligible. There's absolutely no chance of that happening. Win as many battles as you like, but how many Sherman tanks can you produce? There's your answer. And that, to me, makes more sense than the kind of more kind of romanticized view of the great man of history. I mean, and the great man of history is kind of it becomes very, it goes through waves of kind of fashionability. And it's easier in a way to construct a narrative around. And it's the sort of thing, if you watch the History Channel, that they will generally build a story around. It was a dark time in the land, and then one man stood up and said no, and people listened, and it was hard for him originally, but then he struggled and created a movement or built an army or something, and then he kind of triumphed and overcame, and it leads us over to this happy ever after fallacy as well, which is something I have kind of railed against for many a year. And this is something that kind of pedagogy, unfortunately, I mean, lots of great teachers don't do this anymore, but a pedagogy, unfortunately, kind of reinforces the idea that it was a dark time in the land, and one man stood up and said no, and then he struggled, and he said, I have a dream. And then, he sort of, for some reason, it all kind of got better, and it's all better now. And that kind of reassuring bromide bullshit, basically, is the sort of thing that undermines contemporary struggles for freedom and justice around the world. There is a kind of a reassured section of essentially white middle class opinion in the UK, at the very least, I can attest to, having spoken to it personally, and I'm guessing in America, that says, well, black people got civil rights. I mean, what are they moaning about now? And it's because of that pedagogy. It's because the idea that police violence somehow ended, that economic oppression somehow went away, that a smattering of celebrity faces, non-white celebrity faces on the TV, mean that somehow ain't sort of centuries of historic and structural economic, social, and political injustices have kind of been undone. And it means that also there's a kind of history that's promulgated and it's popular that says, well, we don't really have to worry about that anymore. Not only do we not have to worry about that anymore, but weren't we the good guys? Weren't we in the Western world the good guys? Because we won the war, and then we won the Cold War, and we got to the end of history in 1999, and it was wonderful, and with liberal democracy, free markets, blah, 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 blah. Didn't everything get better? And this is a kind of, when you dig into it, this is a very deep hegemonic idea. It's a very deep kind of hegemonic way of way of seeing the world that is kind of comforting to a tier of Western society, and I dispute it entirely. I think that again, actually, in fact, it is too simplistic to say, and this is a kind of one of the rallying calls on the left of Britain and America are as bad as the Nazis. Well, not exactly, but Britain and America in the Second World War, both imperial powers, both with different kinds of segregation, and both who when the British won the war, they wanted to win the war on their terms. They wanted to win the war and ensure that their empire prevailed.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. One of the perks about having 4 kids that you know about is actually getting a direct line to the big man up north. And this year, he wants you to know the best gift that you can give someone is the gift of Mint Mobile's unlimited wireless for $15 a month. Now, you don't even need to wrap it. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
I'm Martha Stewart, and I believe the best gifts are not only beautiful, but useful every single day. And Lennox has brought timeless beauty and lasting quality to our tables for generations. And their Lennox Spice Village is the perfect holiday gift for someone you love or for yourself. Spice Village transforms everyday spices into inspired memories filled with warmth and joy all year long. Give a gift that lasts beyond the holidays. Discover the collection at lennox.com/spicevillage.
With stays under $250 a night, Vrbo makes it easy to celebrate sweater weather. Book a cabin with leaf views or a home with a fire pit for nights with friends. With stays under $250 a night, find a home for your exact needs. Book now at Vrbo.com.
So for those kind of teleological reasons, I don't do history as entertainment, but there's another deeper reason as well. I fundamentally disagree with the idea that we have a right to be entertained by history. When I look at the books on my shelf, I look at books about people's lives who, even if it's not during a war or a revolution, people's lives which were harder than mine is now. Okay, and I can attest to the fact that they all were harder than mine is now because I live at an unparalleled, unprecedented, and perhaps unique moment in human history. I live a life and compared to the various elites, I live a fairly modest life, but I live a life of unparalleled comfort and security. And to look at war as entertainment, and if you look at the History Channel, that's how it's treated. Exciting, daring commando raids. Well, when I talked to Damian Lewis the other year, the author of the various SAS Heroes books, the point he made was that you have at the end of the war, when they disbanded the SAS, these kind of elite hero fighters, they were all deeply traumatized. So that the things that we derive, he writes to kind of honor these people. I think that's entirely valid. But when we reduce history to entertainment, I question what right we have to do that. I question the morality of that, because what we are doing in the main is we are reducing human suffering to entertainment. And even if it is the kind of, and I've talked about this when I've talked about the Holocaust in the past, the kind of prurient, morbid fascination with the unimaginable horrors of the Holocaust, or Mao's famine, or Stalin's purges, or pick your favorite atrocity. Sometimes there is value in trying to fathom how any human being could do something so barbaric, so monstrous. But again, I think that there are TV producers and even podcast producers out there that aren't posing even that question. I think they're looking for kind of prurient horror. And I don't think anybody has a right to do that, because the raw source material are the lives of human beings that have come before us. So that's why I don't do that. And I think it would be terrible. I mean, really be awful podcast if I tried to kind of engage in sort of rest is history type kind of thigh slapping bonhomie with somebody. I mean, everyone would hate that, not least of all me. And by the way, I'm not kind of implying that the rest is history does kind of prurient stuff. They don't, but it's very much kind of entertainment. History is entertainment. I think the history teacher in me is very much focused on what we can gain from something, how it can inform us of the world around us. Do I expect this to be some kind of self-betterment where people go, right, I see the horrors of racism and imperialism, I'm going to go and make a better world? Well, no, you don't have to. I think that the counsellor in me believes that everybody has the right to make of things what they will. Sometimes you will walk away from something, and I remember as a Holocaust educator walking away from various trips to Auschwitz-Birkenau thinking, well, I gotta say, I think I understand human beings even less than I did beforehand, and it doesn't matter with that particular topic. It doesn't matter how many times I've been there. It doesn't matter how many books I've read on the subject. It doesn't matter how many survivors I've met, and I've met a few. I'll never understand it. I'll understand the historiography of it and the theories and the timetables and the primary evidence and the piles of shoes. You can understand all of that. I will never understand it, though. And that's I guess a good thing to kind of embrace, your limitations, and your ability to kind of fathom what drives that sort of monstrous thing. So this is a bit of a kind of like a rambly roundup of everywhere mentally I've been over a long, long time, and I never share this kind of thing. I don't know why exactly. I just presume nobody ever really wants to hear it, but I wanted to share this because it's your podcast. Okay, I record it, I choose the topic, but if you weren't listening to it, it wouldn't exist. It would just be some files on my computer. So it belongs to you. And I really want you to know that. And some people write into me. I've made some really good friends this podcast, some really, really special people who I'll give a brief mention to some at the end who have transformed this podcast. But a lot of people, that's probably not necessary. Some people, I get a constantly in life-affirming slew of far right people. You're out there listening, guys. I do read all the comments. Often some of them are too ridiculous to respond to, but I do read them. I did a video. I did a podcast which became a video years ago on why Hitler isn't a socialist, and it's evergreen. I'm going to take it down in the end because it's just become rage bait now, and that's not what it's all about. But honestly, the numbers of people who respond to that video with he said he was a national socialist, and or kind of other sort of right-wing think tank engineered talking points. I gotta say that I feel enriched by that. I really do. It gives me a kind of a real snapshot into the kind of alt-right discourse. But so thanks, guys. I appreciate that. But yeah, I will take that video down eventually because it's it becomes wearisome in the end.
Take control of the numbers and supercharge your small business with Xero. That's Xero. With our easy-to-use accounting software with automation and reporting features, you'll spend less time on manual tasks and more time understanding how your business is doing. 87% of surveyed U.S. customers agree Xero helps improve financial visibility. Search Xero with an X or visit Xero.com/ACAST to start your 30-day free trial. Conditions apply.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. One of the perks about having 4 kids that you know about is actually getting a direct line to the big man up north. And this year, he wants you to know the best gift that you can give someone is the gift of Mint Mobile's unlimited wireless for $15 a month. Now, you don't even need to wrap it. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
And I think it's important if you're going to do a podcast like this, people aren't going to agree with you. People do have their various perspectives, and there's sometimes you'll talk about India or Australia or Czechoslovakia or Vietnam, and the most amazing things happens is somebody from that part of the world says, "Okay, that's your perspective, but let me tell you what it's like living here and what my granddad said about that." And what you get to see how the world is seen from different, from all over, from different perspectives. And man, that's a gift. That's such a gift. And I don't expect or I don't require everyone to agree with me. I mean, what's the point of that? Why is that necessary? There are things I think that are beyond refutation, that the evidence suggests are beyond refutation. I don't want to kind of spend hours going into all of that, but you probably know some of my favourite little hobby horses. But a lot of things are subject to interpretation, and that's why when I get different people, different historians coming on the podcast to talk about it, to talk about what they think and how they have seen the world and what their research shows them. That's just a brilliant experience. I think one of the great privileges of this podcast, and I'm still in awe that this happens, is when you get academics from around the world. Academics, when it's 3 p.m. here in Wales, somebody's waking up in LA at 5:30 to talk about their work. I mean, wow, what an honor, what an unbelievable honor. And I've got to find out some amazing things and talk to some amazing people. And that brings me really to my little vote of thanks. And so in no particular order, I'd just like to say thanks to a few people. Let's say, and if this is all a bit cringe, well, too bad really, because we got to honor people. I want to say thank you to my good friend Alvaro in Spain, who without whom the explaininghistory.org website wouldn't now be sort of read by about 18 to 20,000 people every month around the world, and that's just us growing. Alvaro, just to kind of let you guys know, Alvaro was a listener who got in touch with me about 5 years ago and said, "Do you want a website? This is what I do. I build websites." He set one up for nothing, out of the kind of goodness of his heart and the belief that this is valuable. This podcast was valuable, and recently has managed to absolutely transform it into a thing of wonder. And we're building it every single day to be something really, really special. I want to thank my good friend Mehdi in Paris, who often messages me from time to time anyway, with thoughts and feelings on the things that I produce, and that's so valuable. And you don't always want to hear from somebody going, "Oh, that was amazing." That's not what you want necessarily. Sometimes having people contact you and say, "Well, look, yeah, I sort of agree with that, but have you thought about it from this perspective?" Or, "I think you actually might be wide of the mark there," because I got to embrace my wrongness as well, my fallibility, and when people contact me to tell me that they don't think that I've said everything that is worth saying on the subject, or said things that are actually wrong. That's great. That's great. I'm not always going to agree with them, but it's great anyway. And I want to thank my good friend Michael from Ireland, out wherever you are at the moment, Michael, for being a kind of a good, steadfast friend of the podcast over the years. I want to thank as well all the authors. I mean, there are too many to name. The hundreds and hundreds of authors that we've had on the podcast. We've had people like my good friend Toby Manning, who've come back a couple of times to talk about pop and politics. We've had some amazing interviews over the years. And there's a team of brilliant book publicists who I kind of happened upon a few years ago. They're like the sort of the secret inner Freemasons of book publicity, who just find me incredible, interesting people to talk to, which is a gift in its own right. So I just want to say thanks to that. But mainly, I want to say thanks to all of you guys. Because you have basically given me, a former history teacher who just kind of talks about stuff, an opportunity to really reach out to the world in some minor way, because again, this is not a massive podcast by any stretch of the imagination. It'll grow one fine day, I'm sure. And to talk about what I think matters, and to try to do two things: to try to look at things that we tend to forget with new eyes, and to remember the people, the human beings, the precious, precious human beings at the heart of all of these events that shape the 20th century for both good and ill. So thanks all very much, guys, and Merry Christmas. And I'll be doing a few more episodes now between now and the new year. But here's having a happy, peaceful time to all of you. Much love. Bye-bye.
Did you know you can opt out of winter? With Vrbo, save up to $1,500 for booking a month-long stay. With thousands of sunny homes, why subject yourself to the cold? Just filter your search by monthly stays and save up to $1,500. Book now at Vrbo.com. Save over $200 when you book weekly stays with Vrbo. This winter, if you need to work, why not work from a chalet? If you haven't seen your college besties since, well, college, you need a week to fully catch up in a snowy cabin. And if you have to stay in a remote place with your in-laws, you should save over $200 a week. That's the least we can do. So, you might as well start digging out the lawn johns, because saving over $200 on a week-long snowcation rental is in the cards. Book now at Vrbo.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Explaining History. This podcast is an independent production, and it's listener support that keeps these conversations going week after week. If you find value in the show and want to help cover the costs of research and production, please consider making a contribution. You can join our community on Patreon or make a one-off donation. Just follow the links in the show notes for this episode. Every bit of support is truly appreciated. Thanks again for listening.